Buckle in, because what you are about to hear is one of those stories that starts off looking like a fashion headline and ends up turning into a full cultural earthquake. A$AP Rocky walked onto a stage in front of a packed crowd. The lights came up, the bass started knocking, and somewhere in the middle of his own performance, the entire internet stopped paying attention to the music. Why? Because the man bent over, and when A$AP Rocky bent over, the camera caught something that nobody, and I mean nobody, was prepared to see on a Tuesday night. Now, before I even get into the details, let me cut straight to the bone with you. This is not a small story. This is not a slow news day filler. This is the kind of moment that hip-hop is going to be arguing about for weeks, because what people thought they were looking at on A$AP Rocky's body was a microphone cord at first, a loose wire, a wardrobe accident, something innocent. But the second he leaned forward and the lights hit him from the right angle, the truth slid out, literally, and the whole arena saw it at the same time the cameras did. A$AP Rocky was wearing a thong, on stage, bouncing, sweating, performing his heart out in what looked very much like a piece of Rihanna's Savage X Fenty inventory. And the second that footage hit social media, the temperature of the entire culture shifted overnight. I'm going to walk you through every layer of this because there is a lot more going on here than just a fashion choice. There is a generational war brewing. There is a marriage being whispered about. There is a brand getting dragged into a controversy nobody planned for. And there is a certain Baton Rouge rapper who took one look at the footage and lit a fire under the entire conversation. So lock in, because by the time we finish, you are going to see exactly why A$AP Rocky may have just handed his critics the loudest weapon they have ever had against him. Let's rewind to the moment it happened. A$AP Rocky was deep into his set, putting on the kind of performance fans paid real money to see, jumping, leaning, working the stage the way performers do. From the front rows, the angle looked normal. From the back rows, the angle looked normal. But from the side stage, where the phones were pointed, there it was, a thin black strap riding up above the waistband of his pants. At first, the crowd whispered. Then somebody zoomed in. Then somebody recorded it. And within minutes, that recording was traveling faster than any single off A$AP Rocky's latest album has ever traveled. People kept looking at the clip thinking they were seeing things. A few users tried to defend him. Maybe it was a stage harness, they said. Maybe it was part of the mic pack. Maybe the lighting was playing tricks. But the more the footage circulated, the more obvious it became. That was not equipment. That was lingerie. And not just any lingerie. The cut, the strap pattern, the way it sat on his hip, all of it screamed Savage X Fenty, which is the very brand his wife Rihanna built from scratch and turned into a billion-dollar empire. Now you tell me, was A$AP Rocky promoting the brand, or was A$AP Rocky wearing the brand for himself? Because there is a very fine line between marketing your wife's lingerie line and modeling your wife's lingerie line. And from where I'm sitting, it looks like A$AP Rocky just stepped clean over that line in front of a sold-out crowd. And this is where the story stops being funny and starts getting serious. Because as soon as the clip went viral, the floodgates opened. Every commentator with a microphone, every blogger with a keyboard, every rapper with an opinion came running to give their take, and the loudest voice in the entire pileup belonged to Boosie. Yes, that Boosie, Lil Boosie, the same Boosie who has built an entire second career out of being the unofficial moral inspector of hip-hop. Boosie saw the footage, took one breath, and went straight to the cameras. Boosie's reaction was a masterpiece of pure shock. He said, and I want you to hear this clearly, that the video had to be AI. He could not, would not, refuse to believe that a grown man, a rapper, a father, would walk on a stage in a thong on purpose. Boosie said he felt sorry for the little boys watching. Boosie said this generation is the worst generation he has ever seen. Boosie said rappers wearing thongs was about to become a fashion trend, and that he, personally, was going back to sleep because the world is ending. Those were his exact sentiments, and the way he delivered them was equal parts comedy and genuine despair. But here's what you need to understand about why Boosie's reaction hit so hard. Boosie is not some random hater on the internet. Boosie is a southern rapper with deep roots in a very specific culture, a culture that views hip-hop masculinity as something sacred, something you do not play with, something you do not blur the lines on. When Boosie speaks about a fashion choice, he is not really talking about fashion. He is talking about identity. He is talking about lineage. He is talking about what he believes hip-hop is supposed to stand for. And from that lens, A$AP Rocky walking on a stage in a thong is not a joke, it's a threat. So Boosie went to work. He went on every platform he could find. He went off in voice notes, in lives, in posts. And whether you agree with Boosie or you think Boosie is the last person who should be policing anybody, you cannot deny that what he said sent a shockwave through hip-hop that A$AP Rocky still hasn't figured out how to answer.
Now, let me bring it back to A$AP Rocky for a second, because I do not want you to lose the thread here. We are still talking about a man who, just a few years ago, was being celebrated as one of the most important style icons of his generation. A$AP Rocky did not just dress different. A$AP Rocky changed the way young men in hip-hop thought about clothes. He made it cool to wear pieces nobody had touched before. He made it cool to mix high fashion with street fashion. He made it cool to walk into a room dressed like nobody else in the room. That was his lane, and for a long time he owned it without a single complaint from anybody. But somewhere along the way, the line moved. And it is fair to ask when exactly that line moved. Was it when A$AP Rocky started showing up in nail polish on red carpets? Was it when A$AP Rocky started carrying purses that looked like they were borrowed straight out of Rihanna's closet? Was it when A$AP Rocky showed up in a skirt and acted like it was the most normal thing in the world? Or is the line moving right now, on this very stage, in this very thong, in this very moment that nobody is going to forget? Because here is the thing, and this is the part nobody wants to say out loud. Fans have been quietly watching A$AP Rocky drift further and further away from the version of himself they fell in love with. They watched him go from cool kid to high fashion student. They watched him go from high fashion student to runway regular. They watched him go from runway regular to something that, in their eyes, no longer looks like a rapper at all. And every single time anybody brought it up, they got told to mind their business. They got told he is just being creative. They got told fashion has no gender. They got told to grow up. Well, the thong on stage may have just ended that conversation forever. And before anybody jumps in my comments swinging, let me make something very plain. This is not about who anybody is attracted to. This is not about anybody's private life. This is not about telling grown men what they can and cannot do behind closed doors. This is about a public performance in a public space in front of fans who paid for a concert, who got handed a fashion statement they never asked for. There is a difference between expressing yourself and broadcasting yourself, and A$AP Rocky just broadcast his choices to every camera in the building. Now, let's talk about Rihanna, because we cannot pretend Rihanna is not part of this story. Rihanna is the mother of A$AP Rocky's children. Rihanna is the woman who built the very brand that just got dragged into the middle of a national meltdown. Rihanna is the same woman who not too long ago was the most untouchable it girl in the entire industry. And somewhere in the middle of all this, the conversation about Rihanna has changed too. You used to hear Rihanna's name and think about music. You used to hear Rihanna's name and think about beauty empires, billion-dollar valuations, sold-out tours, untouchable star power. Now you hear Rihanna's name and the very next sentence is about her partner's fashion choices. That is not a coincidence. That is what happens when one half of a couple starts pulling all the headline weight in the wrong direction. Rihanna's name is now being mentioned in the same breath as a thong on a stage, and that has to sting, no matter how strong her PR team is. And whether Rihanna wants to admit it publicly or not, the streets are talking. The streets are asking if she is okay with this. The streets are asking if she helped pick the outfit. The streets are asking if Savage X Fenty is going to lean into this moment with a marketing push or quietly distance itself from the whole episode. There is no neutral position here. Either A$AP Rocky wore the thong with her blessing, which opens up an entire conversation about the dynamic in their household, or A$AP Rocky wore the thong without her blessing, which opens up an entirely different conversation about how much of his behavior she is actually able to control. Either answer is a problem, and the silence from Rihanna's camp is telling. Let's bring in another angle, because this story has so many layers I do not want you to miss any of them. Take a look at where hip-hop has been heading for the last 5 years, slowly, quietly, in ways most people did not notice until it was too late. Watch the rappers, watch the videos, watch the press runs, the nails, the handbags, the crop tops, the skirts, the jewelry that used to be reserved for women, the makeup that used to get a man laughed out of the building. None of it happened overnight. All of it happened one fashion choice at a time, and every time somebody pushed back, they got told they were behind the times. But A$AP Rocky did not invent this shift. A$AP Rocky just took it further than anybody else was willing to take it, and by doing that, A$AP Rocky may have just exposed something that the industry has been working very hard to keep quiet. The question that everybody is whispering, the question that Boosie was screaming, the question that nobody in the executive suites wants you to ask out loud is simple. Who exactly is behind the steady push to soften, blur, and rewire the modern male rapper image? Because somebody, somewhere, is making decisions, and those decisions are showing up on every stage in America. I'm not telling you the answer, I'm telling you the question. And I'm telling you that A$AP Rocky may have just made that question impossible to ignore.
Now let me hit you with the part of the story that most commentators are too scared to touch. A$AP Rocky is not the first rapper to play around with feminine fashion, and he will not be the last. But there is a difference between flirting with a look and committing to a transformation. People keep bringing up older comparisons, asking whether this is just another evolution or whether something deeper is happening here. The whispers about hidden agendas, the questions about why the most masculine genre in music keeps getting nudged in the opposite direction, the strange silence from the executives who used to draw firm lines on what their artists could wear. Whether you agree with the people asking those questions or you think they are overreacting, you have to acknowledge that the questions are being asked, and they are being asked louder than ever after this thong incident. A$AP Rocky did not just put on lingerie. A$AP Rocky pressed the gas pedal on a debate that the culture has been trying to dodge for a decade. And the funniest, saddest, most ironic part of the whole thing is that A$AP Rocky is supposed to be on tour right now. A$AP Rocky is supposed to be promoting his music. A$AP Rocky is supposed to be reminding the world that he is, first and foremost, one of the most stylish rappers of his generation. Instead, the only thing trending under A$AP Rocky's name right now is the strap of a thong riding up out of his pants in front of thousands of paying fans. That is not a marketing win. That is a career detour. And the longer the story stays in the news cycle, the harder it becomes for A$AP Rocky to drag the conversation back to his actual songs. Let me give you another layer that everybody is missing. Watch the social media response from the women in hip-hop. Watch how quiet a lot of the female artists have been on this one. Normally, when a male rapper does something controversial, the women in the culture are the first to speak, either to defend him, or to drag him, or to crack a joke. But on this specific story, the silence from the women is interesting. Almost like they are waiting to see what Rihanna does first. Almost like nobody wants to be the first to step on the toes of the biggest brand owner in the room. That kind of silence speaks louder than any comment ever could. Meanwhile, the men in hip-hop, the older heads especially, are not staying quiet. Boosie kicked the door down, but he was not alone in the room for long. Other voices started chiming in. Old school rappers started shaking their heads. Producers who built their careers in a different era of hip-hop started questioning, on the record, whether this is the kind of legacy they spent 30 years building. The undertone in all of their statements is the same. They feel like they handed the culture to a generation that is throwing it away. They feel like every time they look up, the look of hip-hop is unrecognizable, and A$AP Rocky, fairly or unfairly, has just become the face of that feeling. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The same voices who are dragging A$AP Rocky are also being dragged themselves.
The internet has not forgotten Boosie's track record. People remember every controversial statement he's ever made about gender, about sexuality, about who is allowed to do what in public. So the moment Boosie opened his mouth, his critics opened theirs. They tried to flip the conversation. They tried to make Boosie the story. They tried to drown out his point by pointing at his past. And in a normal news cycle, that might have worked. But this is not a normal news cycle, because the footage of A$AP Rocky in that thong is so loud, so unmistakable, so undeniable, that no amount of deflection toward Boosie can pull the spotlight off A$AP Rocky. The footage is the story. The thong is the story. The stage is the story. And no matter how many people try to redirect, the camera keeps coming back to A$AP Rocky. Let's talk about the fan reaction for a minute, because this is where the heartbreak lives. The longtime A$AP Rocky fans, the ones who've been with him since the early mixtape days, the ones who grew up wearing the same brands he wore, the ones who studied his style like it was a textbook, those fans are torn in half right now. Some of them are defending him to the death. Some of them are unfollowing him in real time. Some of them are quietly admitting, in private group chats and replies they later delete, that this one might have been too far. Because once you cross from style icon to shock value, you cannot uncross that line. A$AP Rocky was supposed to be the cool one, the smart one, the artist who could push limits without breaking them. And the moment he walked on a stage in lingerie, the line between cool and chaotic got blurred for a lot of people who used to defend him without hesitation. Now, I want to address something else, because I see it in the comments before I even read them. Somebody is going to say I'm being too harsh. Somebody is going to say I'm being judgmental. Somebody is going to say fashion is fashion, and a man should be able to wear whatever he wants. And to that, I will say this: a man can wear whatever he wants. That has never been the argument. The argument is whether, when you are one of the most influential young rappers in the world, with millions of impressionable kids watching every move you make, you owe those kids a little bit of awareness about what you broadcast from a stage they paid to attend. That is not censorship, that is responsibility. And A$AP Rocky, in this moment, may not have understood the weight of what he carried into that arena.
Now here's the twist nobody's talking about. The marketing departments behind some of these brands are watching this story very carefully, because controversy sells, and there's a real chance, a very real chance, that somebody behind the scenes is already pitching a campaign that leans into the very moment A$AP Rocky is being criticized for. Do not be surprised if in the next few weeks, a Savage X Fenty ad shows up that conveniently features A$AP Rocky in similar attire, framed as a bold statement, marketed as the future of fashion, sold to you as a moment of cultural courage. That is how the machine works. It takes scandal and rebrands it as innovation. It takes outrage and rebrands it as conversation. So if you see that campaign drop, you heard it here first. And do not let the slick marketing erase the fact that the original moment was not a campaign. It was a wardrobe choice nobody asked for, broadcast on a stage that did not need it, in front of a fan base that is now arguing with itself instead of enjoying his music. Let me give you the final piece of this puzzle, because the story does not end with the thong. The story ends with the legacy. A$AP Rocky has been carving out his place in hip-hop for over a decade. A$AP Rocky has been building a discography, building a family, building a brand, building an empire alongside one of the most famous women alive. And in one single night, A$AP Rocky may have just rewritten the way history remembers him. Not as the trendsetter, not as the boundary pusher, but as the rapper who in the middle of his own tour walked on a stage in his wife's underwear and split the entire hip-hop world in half. That is the legacy moment, whether he meant it to be or not. So where does it go from here? Boosie is not backing down. The footage is not going anywhere. Rihanna has not said a word. A$AP Rocky has not made any public attempt to clean it up, and the longer that silence lasts, the louder the speculation becomes. Some people are saying A$AP Rocky is leaning into the moment on purpose, knowing controversy keeps his name buzzing. Some people are saying A$AP Rocky was caught slipping, and his team is in damage control mode. Some people are saying this is the beginning of a bigger reveal that he has been planning for months. Nobody knows for sure, but everybody is watching.
And that right there is why this story is not going away. Because in an industry where attention is the currency, A$AP Rocky just deposited the biggest check of his career. The question is whether the bank is going to honor it or whether the next move he makes is going to bounce. Before I wrap this up, let me leave you with one more thought, because I know you came here for the unfiltered take, and I am not about to send you away with a soft landing. Hip-hop has always been about pushing limits, from the clothes to the lyrics to the videos to the lifestyles. Pushing limits is what made the genre powerful in the first place. But there's a difference between pushing a limit and abandoning a foundation. The foundation of hip-hop, the bedrock that made the culture what it is, was built by men who walked through fire to make sure their image stood for something. And whether you love A$AP Rocky or you have already turned on him, this moment forces every single one of us to ask whether that foundation is still standing or whether the new generation is quietly digging it up brick by brick. I'm not telling you the answer to that. I'm telling you the question. And I'm telling you that A$AP Rocky, with one wardrobe decision, just shoved that question into the middle of the room where nobody can pretend they don't see it. So now, I want to hear from you. Tell me down below where you stand. Was A$AP Rocky making a bold statement, or was A$AP Rocky out of pocket? Is Boosie right to call this out, or is Boosie the wrong messenger for the message? Is Rihanna laughing about this in private, or is Rihanna quietly furious? Drop your verdict in the comments, share this with somebody who needs to see it, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn the notifications on so the next time a story like this one cracks open, you're not the last one in your group chat to know about it. I didn't write this story, I'm just the one decoding it, and if A$AP Rocky has anything else up his sleeve or in his pants, you better believe we'll be the first ones to break it down for you. Until then, stay sharp, stay watching, and stay locked in, because the culture is shifting in real time, and the cameras are still rolling.